Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Columbus Wired Buckeye Podcast. I'm your host, Drew Sample, and I'm joined, as usual, by my good friend and co-host, Andy Evans.
What's up, people?
And our special guest, who I actually think it started with our guest because I don't really know how to use Zoom, Dillon Davis from the Delaware Gazette, the man, the myth, the legend, one of my favorite Buckeye beat journalists. Dillon, thanks for joining us today.
I'm happy to be doing this again. I'm glad you guys are still doing this, and I'm excited to talk some Buckeye football.
Heck yeah.
I think Dillon now, Drew, should be considered a co-host, much like us.
Yeah, he's a co-host. I mean, he's on the Columbus Wired payroll too.
I'll take the title without the responsibility. Don't you put that responsibility on me?
No. There's you just got to show up. I think I figured it out so we can all be on here. So it's not just going to be me, because it was never coming to me talking on the video, and I don't know how Zoom works. So we'll get this kink worked out. But lots have happened, lots of hype this season. We wanted to talk. So we've had 3 games, 2 against MAC schools, 1 against Marshall, which is the Sun Belt Conference. Which, no hate on those schools. The MAC has looked actually really good. Toledo and BG. I mean, BG was in it with Texas A&M till the end last night, which is exciting in my opinion. I think if the MAC is strong, college football is good. Like if the MAC can come in and upset teams, it's kind of exciting to me. Like as a guy that went to a MAC school, but lots to talk about today. So. I guess let's just kind of start with what's your takeaway so far this season. So Dillon, let's start with you. You're the guest. Overall, lots of hype in this season. How do you see this season going so far?
I think it's been as advertised. I've been really impressed with the way the offensive line played the last 2 games. I almost said 2 weeks, but I guess it's been 2 games in 3 weeks. But I've been really impressed with that. I wasn't overly impressed with them after the opener. And I think going into the season, that was the biggest question for Ohio State. I think they checked the boxes at every area but the offensive line. And not to say that they couldn't ultimately check that box as well, but it was kind of a remains to be seen kind of thing. And after week 1, it was kind of up and down. But I think the last 2 weeks, I've been really impressed with the offensive line, which should really encourage Ohio State fans, because I think that's the one thing that Willard won't hold, that'll make or break the season for Ohio State, is if that offensive line can be on par with, the rest of the talent that they have in the backfield, on the perimeter. And so far it is. Again, it's all relative to competition. That's just the unfortunate reality of Ohio State's schedule through these first 3 games, is that it always comes back to, but it's against, these teams. So I understand that. I will say that Marshall, I think, was probably the best of the 3 teams, and gave Ohio State a little bit of a better challenge. And while Michigan State might not go win the Big Ten, they're going to be a significantly, a better challenge than Marshall. So we'll learn more about the Buckeyes next Saturday as they open the Big Ten slate. But just for now, I think it's been as advertised. I think, they've checked just about every box you'd want to check through 3 games.
Andy, what are your takeaways so far?
Yeah, Dillon brings up a great point with the offensive line. And is that a tribute to Justin Fry? Is that a tribute to Chip Kelly and his play calling and where he's setting up the offensive line to produce maximum results? But to Dillon's point, you have seen Ohio State's level of competition kind of slowly escalate. It's going to continue to escalate this coming Saturday on the road, Big Ten opener against a Michigan State team that, they were in it against Boston College, but got shocked, kind of, if you will, at the end. But still, it's a Big Ten opponent. And, with Akron, you started here, then you kind of raised it, even though Western Michigan didn't put up as much of a fight as it seemed that Akron did. But I still kind of consider Western Michigan to be an elevated opponent. We'll find out at the end of the year if that's true. And then Marshall, was even a step up from that. And we saw that in Saturday's game. But the one thing that I have really been impressed with is Chip Kelly's play calling. once again, is the offensive line to his play calling? Are they playing better because of the types of plays that he's been out there calling, and they're executing to not perfection, but definitely much better than they have been, or that, the last couple of years. And the rushing attack. That's been the one thing that I really wanted to see Ohio State succeed at, that we really haven't had a prolific rushing attack since probably what, 2020, even then, Trey Sermon with his one glorious game where he set the single game rushing record in the Big Ten championship against Northwestern. Aside from that, it wasn't like they were completely rushing the ball with extreme productivity in 2020. So we haven't really seen a real dominant rushing attack in a few years. And Quinshon Judkins, our boy from Ole Miss, he's definitely come in and I think popped a lot of eyeballs, and he has elevated his play game by game. And so the rushing attack and Chip Kelly's play calling, those are two things that have got me excited so far this season for sure.
What are your takeaways about the defense? There was a lot of complaints I heard from the Buckeye Nation yesterday, and we don't blitz enough. Why aren't we blitzing? Why aren't we doing schemes? Like I think everybody's looking for something to be upset about. But have we noticed like any? It seems like to me Jim Knowles has just been playing just a base defense. We're not going to show what we were really looking to do. It seems like in early games. What have been your takeaways from the defensive side of the ball, Andy?
Just that. I don't think that Jim Knowles wants to tip his hand too early. He knows that he's got a talented enough defense to where he can play a base, he can play a man, he can play a zone. He doesn't have to blitz a whole lot. His defensive line can create some havoc on their own. And he does not want to show too much at this point as to what he knows that this defense is truly capable of until they start really getting into the meat of the season. I think we'll probably see a little bit more against Michigan State. And of course, I think it's also indicative upon what the opposing offense is calling, what kind of plays they're calling. And yeah, that was a little disconcerting to see a couple of firsts go down yesterday against Marshall. Was I expecting the Thundering Herd to come out on their opening possession of the game and not only drive all the way down the field and get inside the red zone, something that only Ohio State had not done? They were the only team in the entire country who had not allowed a team inside the red zone up to that point in the season, but then allow them to score a touchdown. Once again, something that they had not done in the first two games. I mean, those things were bound to happen at some point. So let's take a step back, Buckeye Nation, and go, all right, Dillon, you brought up a great point, and I'm going to let you say it as far as that aspect is concerned, but it was bound to happen. So am I disappointed in the defense? Not at all. They still held Marshall to 14 points. Yeah, the last two games, they didn't force a turnover. But ultimately, I'm fine with the defense right now, and Jim Knowles playing it close to the vest and playing it sort of bland and boring and vanilla, because we're going to see much crazier, much different things out of them as the season goes along.
Dillon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that it's been, relatively vanilla by design and as it should be. Look, Ohio State's defense in the first half yesterday just wasn't very good. That's just the fact of the matter. But, they still ended up giving up 61 yards in the second half, 29 yards in the third quarter when both, all the starters were still in there. So, I mean, they dominated the second half of the football game. So, for as, not great as the first half was, they were still really good in the second half, so it wasn't all lost. Bring the pressure thing. Marshall was trying to get the ball out quickly. That air raid offense, they're just trying to sling it around, as quick as possible, left, right, up and down. So it's bringing pressure sometimes against that's a little bit dangerous and maybe even also a little bit unnecessary, because you're not going to get there anyways because they're just getting the ball out so fast. So there are things there, but even there were times where I was a little confused about why they weren't dialing up pressure. But in those same instances when they didn't bring pressure or added pressure, look, Ohio State's front four just didn't beat guys up front, and like it's Ohio State Marshall, you would expect those guys to just beat guys, without needing to bring pressure. Just winning with 3 or 4 down linemen. Ohio State didn't do that enough either. So again, it was disappointing in the first half, but they played much better in the second half. I don't think there's anything to really be concerned about. I know Ohio State fans will find something to be concerned about week in and week out. That's just the nature of this fan base. But in terms of just being concerned, there's nothing there. The whole not having given up a touchdown yet, or not even allowing a team to get in the red zone. Look, that's great and all and whatnot, but were they going to go the entire season with that? No. So is it the worst thing? Do I think to kind of get that out of the way and not have that hanging over them anymore as they get ready for Big Ten play? No, it doesn't bother me at all. I didn't sit there in the press box and say, oh shoot, man, that streak's gone now, because it was going to be gone sooner rather than later anyway. So, just get it over with. And nobody's going to remember they gave up 14 points in the first half to Marshall in, 5 or 6 weeks when they're getting ready to play some big football games. So yeah, it's fine. Now, obviously, if it were a trend that continues, then we monitor it and we'll maybe adjust our thoughts accordingly. But it didn't bother me one bit, considering the way they played in the second half.
I think the most concerning thing for me yesterday was the play of our kicker Fielding. It was interesting in the presser. He talked about how much better it is this year, having Ryan Day work with them. Pretty much saying without saying it's nicer to not have this special teams coach. And then, man, what the heck was that yesterday? It was 3 kicks in a row, out of bounds, giving Marshall great starting position. The third kick was at 3:33 left in the second quarter, which was just odd to me, But what are your takeaways on the kicking play of yesterday, Dylan? Like that was shocking to me. Like even just bad kicking, it's just like, dude, like that's 3 in a row. Like that was just insane.
Yeah, I mean it was bizarre for sure. I didn't know if they were trying something like it just wasn't going well. Like if they were trying to I don't even know, pooch it or something like that. I didn't know if I don't know if it was something like that because it was just so bizarre just to flat out kick 3 kicks out of bounds.
And we dodged that bullet too on that punt return that it ended up getting called back where he couldn't see it in the sun or something, fumbled it, lost it, and then luckily it came back. And that was weird too because it wasn't Brandon Innocent. I don't even know who was that who muffed that.
It was in it. It was in it. Yeah, it was in it.
I was wishful thinking on my part then.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's I hear you, but that's the fact of the matter. We talked so much about Jaden Ballard last week, and the issues with him, and obviously he got him removed from the kickoff, the return team for Brandon Ennis. So it's not good right now with the Ohio State special teams, and given everything that Ohio State fans have seen from their special teams, in recent years, it's like PTSD. Just seeing these issues come up now. Obviously, it didn't matter in a game like that, but it sure as hell will matter. Again, Michigan State's not a great football team. I think I saw Ohio State open as like a 24-point favorite in that game. So, but on the road and in the Big Ten at night, if there's any recipe for an upset, like go out there and muff a punt early in that first half and give Michigan State some momentum, let them score off of that. That's how upsets are brewed. So stuff like that will matter as the stakes ramp up. But it's bad. Heck, we don't even know if Jaden Fielding's going to be continuing to kick off anymore. So Ryan alluded to the fact that maybe there's a change there, and we saw. Oh my goodness, now his name's escaping me. The other kicker. Sorry.
Austin Snyder.
Yeah. We saw him come in the game. So, and again, Ryan alluded to the fact that they'll evaluate it in the same way that they evaluated Jaden Ballard as a returner. So it's interesting for sure. I tend to believe that there was just a hiccup and that it'll be fine. It's not something we've seen before. Jaden Fielding's kicked a lot of kicks for Ohio State already, so I tend to believe it'll be okay. But it was something Ryan had to say in the moment because obviously it is unacceptable, and he said as much.
Andy, your thoughts on special teams play of yesterday?
Yeah, obviously seeing 3 straight kickoffs go out of bounds. I'm not sure if I've ever witnessed that in my 38 years of watching Ohio State football. Maybe a couple more than that. But yeah, hey, he's human. Maybe he just got a case of the yips. Maybe to Dillon's point, they were trying to do something a little different, a little funkier than normal, trying to maybe get like a coffin corner type deal where it just, skirts inside the pylon in the end zone and it's an automatic touch. Why you would try something like that anyways, just kick the damn thing, as far to the back of the end zone as you can to ensure a touchback. But I'm not too overly concerned about at this point. Like Dillon said, I think it was just a one-off where Jaden just, he got a case of the yips and it happens. However, the fielding part of the return game so far, it just kind of seems like this is what Ohio State, the return game, it is what it is. It's just not as prolific as, it hasn't really been a prolific part of Ohio State's game for a number of years. You go back, it's been 10 years, I believe, 2014 or 2015, since we last saw a punt return for a touchdown, which was Jalen Marshall against Indiana. And then, you even go back, I believe, before that, as far as a kickoff return. The Teddy Gins of the world just don't come along all too often as far as being that prolific punt and kick returner. So it is what it is. I'm not, when it comes to returning punts and kicks, as long as you're catching the ball, you're not muffing it and giving the other team an opportunity to have a very short field and score, I'm okay with that. But we saw that almost happen yesterday. Like you said, Drew, that was, Brandon Ennis, dude, that son was just, it was pounded down. It was beaten down. It was in his face. Once again, we're human, mistakes happen. He dropped the ball. Luckily, they were able to get a redo on that down because of the illegal formation by Marshall, which I think the ref said something, Dillon, about, or maybe even Drew, you can.
Yeah, they didn't have enough guys on the line. They didn't.
It's something. Yeah, but it was even something like they were purposely trying to do something to alter the play clock or something goofy. Like I could be completely off base, but I swear, or maybe someone in the press box said that, and I'm kind of down, doing my thing on the laptop on good old X, trying to get out, and I'm kind of half listening, trying to hear what's going on in the field. And I got people next to me talking. I could have heard something somewhere else, but at any rate,
Joel Klatt,
they got the ball back.
Gus Johnson were saying it was they just didn't have enough guys on the line.
But I swear I heard something.
They might have been trying to do something, and
they were trying to purposely do something to screw up the play somehow and throw Ohio State off kilter, which they did apparently, or the Sun did, one of the two,
for sure,
or a combination. But luckily, they were able to get the ball back. And then immediately following that, what happened? Sean, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, busts off that 86-yard touchdown run. So, but ultimately, I'm not overly concerned. But I do have to say, I'm really rooting for my boy from down under, Joe McGuire. If you have not had a chance to watch this dude, go back and check the Columbus Wired YouTube channel. We do have the interview session from him. That was right before was that actually? I think it was after the Akron game. At any rate, that's he's my boy, and I'm really rooting for Joe McGuire to get out there and really show what them Aussies can do with their style of kicking, because I think he's going to be a good one, mate.
Well, I'm glad we posted his video, because last year we didn't post the punter's video, and you were like, oh, he's just a punter, and then he transferred out. So it must have been because you didn't like him, Andy. So I just want to call you out on that. The Judkins.
Who, Jesse Mirko?
Yeah. The Judkins Henderson friendly competition seems to be very it's kind of fun to watch, because you can tell they have a healthy competition going. I've been hearing it's just Buckeye fans, I know Judkins should be the starter. It's like they play, it doesn't really matter. They both get equal time. It's like it's a long season, guys. But it's comforting to see two running backs that run hard. So Dillon, obviously there's a lot of hype with Judkins coming from Ole Miss. There was all these rumors that he was going to transfer back to Ole Miss and all this other crazy stuff. Doesn't look to be the case. What are your? I mean, we kind of hint on the thoughts, but it seems like they're having a competitive touchdown competition between the two. What are your thoughts? I mean, you kind of hinted on the running game earlier. Let's do a little bit deeper dive. Like, what are your big takeaways of Judkins and Henderson and how these players have been able to really shift momentum in these games?
Yeah, I mean they're I go back to the as advertised. I mean they're as good as we thought they might be as a duo. We knew what Trey was, obviously having seen him when he's healthy. When he looks fully healthy, he looks as explosive as he's ever been. And we've seen like when Trey's healthy that I think a lot of people sleep on the fact like he's a true home run hitter when he's healthy. He can fly and he's shifty as well. So we knew that, and obviously we thought we knew what we were going to get, what Ohio State was getting Quinshon just from seeing him in Ole Miss, and he's been every bit that good. My biggest takeaway is like we hear so much about like how much they enjoy each other and they are happy for each other. So that, it's a healthy competition or, a healthy running back room and all that stuff. But I do know, for all the Ohio State fans that, who are saying, this guy should start or Quinshon should start, whatever, you're right. It doesn't matter. But like it's an interesting dynamic because as I looked at, and I get that it was a blowout of Marshall and these guys didn't even play in the fourth quarter. But as I looked at the stats yesterday, like Quinshon can't be getting only 14 carries in a football game in bigger football game. And he probably won't get only 14 carries in bigger football games. I get that. And then I got thinking about it, I was like, well, Quinshon can't get 14 carries in a football game, but Travion Henderson sure as hell can't get only 6 carries in a football game. So the two combined for 20 carries. And again, I understand that's relative to the football game that they played and the team they were playing was a blowout, didn't play the fourth quarter. I understand all of that. But I guess if anything, I'm just really interested to see how these guys, these carries are split moving forward because both of those guys, you could say that, Ohio State can't afford to give these guys, less than 12 to 15 carries a game, both. And I would say even like 15, is a number that both those guys need to get in a game. But that's 30 snaps right there. And, depending on how many plays you get to run in a football game, depending on how that football game goes, that's a really tough number to hit or to say you're going to hit, come hell or high water, 30 snaps between 30 carries between your two running backs. So it'll be interesting to see. The good news is if whoever's in the game for Ohio State, they have a true home run hitter, in the backfield, a guy who could take it the distance at any time. And that's exciting for Ohio State. And Ryan Day alluded to this yesterday in the press conference that like Will Howard's ability to pull the football and also burn you just does wonders for any running game. When you have that quarterback threat, it causes that defensive end to come crashing down to just stop for a second and think, where it causes that linebacker to just be a step slower as he tries to process it to make sure he knows where the ball's going or who has the ball. Those things do wonders to open up the run game. I think you're seeing it already. I think you'll continue to see it as Will Howard shows more of what he can do with his legs and when he has to. A lot to like about the Ohio State run game for sure. And that's not a surprise from the skill positions. It was it was probably the biggest question was always about up front and would they have the guys that could paved the way for those running backs. And so far, so good. Ohio State's offensive line's done its job, and they have a lot to be confident about. Again, Ryan said that yesterday that he actually said they needed some confidence, up front in the run game. They have that right now. They need to go to up East Lansing and establish line of scrimmage and win that game up front, and do that. And then, you're feeling really good about it going into, what will be another physical Big Ten game against Iowa, and then you go to Eugene for perhaps the game of the year in the Big Ten. So or one of the two games of the year in the Big Ten. So big week for them to go out there and do that again and start really feeling good about themselves and maybe kind of establish that identity that we all hoped Ohio State would have with these two running backs.
Andy, your take?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, I mean that's been the one thing that I've been impressed so far with. Is their ability to run the football. Yeah, it was a little low against Akron, but then they upped the ante against Western Michigan, and then they just went berserk as far as I'm concerned yesterday against Marshall. But to Dylan's point, Quinshon only had 14 carries, and that was still twice as many as Travion's 6. However, you look at the yards per rush; they each had over 12 yards per carry yesterday. And an 86-yard touchdown run for Quinshon, which is now the tied for third longest rush in OSU history, period. Not just touchdown run, but just overall run. And then a 40-yard jolt by Travion. That'll certainly help your stats. But to Dillon's point, these are explosive running backs. We've seen Dion do it. Can he stay healthy? Let's hope so. Quinshon, when given the opportunity to get into open space, I mean, we saw it on that 86-yarder. We saw it against Western Michigan on like an 80-some-yard touchdown run as well that was called back for a holding or a block in the back penalty. But we know that these two are dangerous. And, yesterday, 57 total plays, 31 of them were runs. And of those 31 run plays, 20 were given out to both Judkins and Trey. So I do think that this offense is going to have to rely on the ability to run the football to open up the passing game, which we've seen now the last couple of weeks. If they go out there and they try to kind of throw first and run second, I don't agree with that. I think they should try and establish the run. Usually that typically is what any good offense is going to do. They're going to try and open things up in the trenches to allow the passing game to succeed. Sometimes it's the other way around, but most of the time it's establish the run to open up the pass. But so far, yeah, I think the competition's been great. Like Dillon said, you hear Quinshon and Trey, they have absolutely like no beef with each other. That's not the right word to use because they're completely supportive of one another. They want to see each other succeed. It was really cool in the post-game highlights that I watched. I think it was CBS or Fox or I don't know, one of them last night as I'm sitting here doing work on the computer. They showed like Trey walking up to Quinshon and like hitting him on the shoulder pads, and Quinshon turns around and, they give each other a big, a handshake, high five type deal. And so that's good to see that as of right now, there is like no sort of hierarchy kind of thing. And for the Buckeye fans that are saying Quinshon needs to be the starter and Trey needs to be, I think that right now the dynamic is just fine. Sometimes there are those you have the sixth man of the year award in the NBA. Those guys, they play better coming off the bench. Is that the case with Quinshon? I mean, I don't know, but technically Trey's the starter and Quinshon has been the quote unquote rushing star the last two games coming off the bench. So as the old saying goes, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Why are we even debating that Quinshon should be starting over Trey? Just let it be, Buckeye fans. Let it be, because right now it's working, and I have absolutely no issue with it.
So right now, stat-wise, Quinshon's got the ball 16 more rushing plays. So he's
and he leads the team right now. He leads the team in yards and in carries. So technically, he kind of is the starter over Travion. He's getting more of the workload than Travion is. So let this dynamic be. Don't screw with it right now. Be happy with where we're at, Buckeye Nation, okay? If you continue on this path, we're going to be just fine. Promise.
Dillon, yeah, you've already covered this. I was going to ask you a question, then I was just like, what to talk about next? There's so much to talk about. Let's kind of talk about some Will Howard play. There was a lot of talks of arm strength. I heard. I do like when he runs, is his arm as strong as it needs to be. I didn't get to see the interception yesterday. I was leaving the farmer's market on my way to go watch the game. I was listening to it with Paul Keels. What happened during the interception? I missed it. So was it just he overthrew it? Like he said he's going to just throw balls up to Jeremiah Smith. If it's him in one-on-one, he's just going to throw it and let Jeremiah do the work. So what happened? I mean, how do you guys think Will Howard is he making good passing decisions? I know Andy has complained about him, and he'll get to it. But Dillon, what's your opinion so far with Will Howard?
Well, the interception, there were different opinions on who was more to blame on that. I was of the opinion that Jeremiah Smith kind of was going to run right past his guy, but it almost like stopped running, like as if he wasn't sure, like he didn't think he was going to get the football. I don't know. It was just kind of weird and whatnot. So I think probably the biggest answer was that I don't necessarily put it on Will Howard, in terms of the ball that he threw, but the fact that the ball probably should have never been thrown is probably the best thing. Now they asked Will Howard about it. Somebody asked Will Howard about it after the game, and Will, yeah, it's kind of an interesting response. If I'm being honest, I kind of read in between the lines that like he was kind of putting it on Jeremiah Smith that like, because basically he said like, things happen. I think at some point he did say things happen and, said he's going to continue to trust Jeremiah, to throw the football up to him and for him to go up and make a play, which suggests to me that like he didn't go up and make a play. That's what Will Howard was saying. So, it was kind of interesting, but I don't know. It was just kind of weird. I just don't think the ball should have ever been thrown. I don't think Jeremiah was expecting the ball or it wasn't a great effort. And I just, at the same time, I don't think that Will Howard drove the ball down the field on that play like he could do. So that I still thought it was a bit of an underthrow. I thought it was a ball that should have been thrown. I thought Jeremiah should have made a better effort on the ball, and I thought it was a ball that was probably just underthrown. But overall, look, Will Howard's looked. I thought he's looked really well, or played really well this year so far. I think the biggest question still with Will Howard is those deep balls and if he can hit those, because look at games where, we'll take the Oregon game, you're in Autzen Stadium at night and you get a chance to hit a, 65-yard home run, in Autzen. You can't afford to miss those things. So I still have a little bit of, questions about Will Howard throwing the deep ball. It's not an arm strength thing. He just sometimes he underthrew the one to Jeremiah in the Western Michigan game. So I don't think it's an arm strength thing. I've seen plenty of arm strength going back to camp from Will Howard. He can drive the ball down the field and make any throw that he needs to make. Now, whether he does it or not, obviously that's, what makes or breaks games and seasons, but it's not an arm strength thing. It just sometimes I don't think he throws, the best deep ball or hasn't so far this year. And there's, hasn't been a lot of opportunities for that. A lot of Ohio State's big plays in the passing game have been, short to intermediate throws that have gone the distance. The guys just made individually, great efforts or outran guys. So there haven't been a lot of deep shots that like for Will Howard to make, but he's missed a couple or at least one for sure. And so that's a question mark. But overall, I think Will Howard, fits this offense perfectly. I still believe that, through 3 games, I think that, as Ohio State needs to, his legs will become a much bigger thing for Ohio State, and that's only going to open up more in the offense. So, I've been fine with Will Howard, absolutely fine. I know there's a lot of stuff in the Buckeye fan base. It's the classic. Everybody's enamored with the backup quarterback, but we don't even know who the backup quarterback is, or they can't even decide who the backup quarterback is. They being Ohio State fans, Ohio State still remains steadfast that Devin Brown is the backup quarterback. And as we saw yesterday, he came off the bench, and got those final snaps. But Ohio State fans still, are certain that Julian Sands, the true, second quarterback, or if he's not, that he should be. And I'm not entirely disagreeing with that, but that's neither here nor there. Buckeye fans want to talk about Will Howard, but I think if you had to put a grade on it, I think he's been a B+ through 3 games. Not perfect by any means, but been solid. And if you get that up to an A- or an A performance, certainly out of Will Howard with everything else Ohio State has, like how's this team not going to win a national championship? So,
Andy, your thoughts on Will Howard, since I threw you under the bus right away and said I know Andy's had some opinions about him.
Yeah, Drew, I appreciate that coming into any segment where I'm getting thrown under the bus right off the bat. Now, I was a guy, admittedly, that when Will Howard decided that he was going to transfer in after Kyle McCord left, and I said then, I'm like, okay, I don't think he's really going to give this offense any more of a spark than Kyle McCord did. I think Will Howard will come in and be formidable, but for people out there to say that Will Howard is going to be this offensive spark and the offense is going to flourish under Will Howard, you're absolutely wrong. Has he done that so far? I mean, it's hard to argue that he hasn't provided at least some sort of spark, I would say. Last year, near the end of fall camp, Ryan Day was waffling back and forth as to whom he was going to start. In fact, he even said this past fall camp that with about 2 weeks left, he felt it was Devin Brown. And then Kyle McCord kind of snatched it away in the last 2 weeks. And so it was really down to the wire. This year, he was like, there was just absolutely no question about it. Will Howard was the guy. The guys seemed to respond better to Will in the huddle and just, on the bench, in the locker room, whatever the case is, they were responding very well to Will Howard in comparison to Devin Brown. And you can even throw a Julian Sayin and Lincoln Keenholz and Air Nolan. Not that Lincoln and Air really at this point, probably have an opportunity to see the field all that much, if maybe at all this season. But nonetheless, I'm happy with where we're at with Will Howard. Yesterday's touch or interception, to me, he underthrew the ball. He said, to Dillon's point in the post-game presser, that basically they practiced the scenario that if everybody's covered, just throw it up to Julian or Jeremiah Smith and let him go make a play. And the way he was kind of talking, I agree, Dillon. I kind of took that as he was kind of putting the onus a little bit on Jeremiah, that Jeremiah didn't do exactly what he expected. But to me, he underthrew the pass, and it was a pass he should not have thrown. I don't think he really gave Jeremiah a great opportunity to go up and get it. That seemed to sail right into the defensive back's hands. But if you look at where Will Howard started off against Akron, once again, just like the rushing game, Will Howard has steadily gotten better. He was 60% complete against Akron. He was 69 against Western Michigan. He was 80% yesterday. I mean, he only threw the ball 20 times, completed 16 of those passes, really 17, because one of them was the first turnover of the year. But I'm fine with where Will Howard's at. You mentioned, earlier about the ability to run the ball, and Dillon, you talked about Will Howard's, ability to use his legs to create some plays, and we really haven't seen that yet this year. This offense, I think they're telling Will Howard, look, we want you to stand in the pocket, a la CJ Stroud, a la Kyle McCord. Don't run around. Don't run the risk of injury. We really haven't seen them run any read option at all, with the exception of his 6-yard touchdown run 2 weeks ago against Western Michigan, which was his only carry of the game. But we have not seen Will Howard scramble around and use his feet to create some plays. I think that time is coming. I am looking forward to seeing what is going to happen if and when the opportunity comes up that Will Howard has to use his legs to create a play. What is the end result going to look like? But for now, I'm okay with what Will Howard has done. Yes, at the first game against Akron, I felt, and I'm not totally putting the blame on Will Howard. I think it was a 50-50 deal at the very beginning of the game. There were times he threw into traffic, but there were times he put the ball on the money, and his receivers, just dropped it. And I knew coming out that this offense was not going to right off the bat just click and explode. They had to kind of settle in a little bit. But honestly, to me, they're settling in quicker than what I was expecting. And so at this point in the season, I'm happy with Will Howard, even though he threw an interception. But once again, that was going to happen at some point. Like Dillon said, hey, just get it out of the way. Get the red zone touchdown out of the way. Get that interception, Will Howard, out of the way. Better to do it now against, a lesser opponent than go throughout the season, not have it happen, and then it happens at a key moment in the game, and they're gonna. How would they respond to that? Would it be like, oh my God, the world is falling, and then they completely crumble and fall apart? Get it out of the way. Get it out of the way in a nothing game, so that way how it feels, and when it happens again, you're ready for it, and you can proceed forward in a manner that is going to be a better result on the next series. So I'm okay. Will Howard, you're doing all right so far in my eyes.
Awesome. Well, I guess moving forward, looking around the Big Ten, what are we seeing? So what's surprising to you guys? Like, what do you think? Or I think we've all been hyped on this big Oregon matchup. To me, I don't think Oregon looks as good as we thought they would be. We've even, I don't want to say who, but somebody said that Andy and I, after one of the Wednesdays at the Woody, Oregon's D's not that good. Our D's way better, and it ain't going to be nothing, which was pretty shocking. But we're looking at Illinois, who's looking really tough. Nebraska seems to be back. I was actually shocked that they lost to Illinois, but Illinois is looking tough. I think there's a lot of teams that look tough that haven't really looked tough before. Indiana's looking really good. I think the Big Ten in general is looking tough. Michigan has no offense, but they're still managing to win because of their defense. But they can't move the ball. So I guess pulling out, what have you noticed about the new Big Ten, Dylan, in this new long season? And looking at our schedule, like who do you think or who are the tough teams now in the Big Ten?
Well, I mean, Oregon looks really good in that rivalry game. I don't have a lot of respect for Oregon State, but Oregon looks really good in that game. So to like write that off as like as just a ho hum business trip out to Eugene, go get your win and come on home, like that's asinine in my opinion. But like that's still going to be a very good football game in a raucous environment. One of the best Ohio State will see all season. Well, one of the two that we'll see best it'll see all season. One of the best it's seen, ever. It's just it's just a great place for a football game, especially at night. And the first time Ohio State ever makes that trip out there, that game's going to be huge. And Oregon still has plenty of talent to make Ohio State pay if Ohio State's not ready to play in that football game. So I still think that's a big one. I was wait and see on USC to see what they did yesterday, and of course, they proved that they are indeed a fraudulent football team when it comes to the big picture of the Big Ten. Look, Lincoln Riley continues to get this free pass, it seems like, for doing absolutely nothing or accomplishing absolutely nothing on the biggest stages that he plays in. And credit to Michigan. Look, Michigan will get beat at some point again before the Ohio State game because of that offense. And it's just, you can't win week in and week out with the kind of offense that they have. And it's bad. It's bad. But, and I'm not going to lie, I thought USC would win the football game, but I tried to tell anybody who listened last week that, like, anybody who thinks this is going to be a blowout or that USC is going to win this game running away, Michigan's physicality, that defense, and their ability to still, to run the football a little bit and find some success in the run game will keep them in the game and give them a chance to win that game late. And sure enough, it won the game for them. Do I think Michigan's a player in the Big Ten race? No, because I just don't see how they can continue to survive with that offense because it is that bad. But
And strength of schedule, they actually have a tough schedule.
Yeah, right. So the hierarchy is kind of interesting. Illinois not buying it, but then they play Penn State. At Penn State it's the whiteout. So you go there and win that game, then all of a sudden people's opinions will change on Illinois really really fast. So I'm still waiting to see on that for sure. I was getting ready to buy Nebraska. I was getting ready to buy Nebraska. I thought, well, here's a football game that, if you're for real, I know Illinois is a better football team, but Friday night at home, Lincoln's rocking, and I thought, well, here's a football game you can't lose in, and they went out and lost it. So
pulled in Nebraska.
They
pulled in Nebraska.
Yeah, I'm sure it felt all too familiar, for some of the things that they've experienced through the years. So it's a Big Ten's kind of a mess right now. Penn State, I still think, if you had to ask me, I still think that Penn State's probably the third. I'm going Oregon, Penn State behind Ohio State. That's probably my top three. But it's kind of there's so much to wait and see about with these teams right now because Ohio State hasn't played anybody. Oregon's looked average at best, through 3 weeks. And then Penn State, they had a scare last week, but they haven't beaten anybody either. So it's just there's so much. Michigan has probably the best win of the Big Ten right now. Honest. Well, I guess the Nebraska win over Nebraska, but yeah, just still a lot to be determined. I still think that Oregon, Penn State are right behind Ohio State as the top three in the conference. So,
Andy, your thoughts on the Big Ten, big picture?
Yeah, I don't think that there's, first of all, was I expecting Michigan to beat USC? That was a toss-up for me. I was talking to a buddy of mine, Michigan fan, on Friday night. He was like, man, I don't know. And I said, you know what? And Dillon, you just said it. And I told him the same thing. I said, dude, every year USC gets hyped up because they're USC and then they fall on their face. And it has been this way for the last almost 15 years since Pete Carroll left. We have not seen a dominant USC team since that time. And what you just said, I mean, here's Lincoln Riley. He's getting all this praise and cred for virtually really not doing a whole lot out there, as far as I'm concerned. Steve Sarkisian, same thing. He was, kind of getting some credit for, USC, they're back. And then, they turn around and they lose the next game as somebody stupid. But given the fact that Michigan's offense is as awful as they are, their ability to run the football, they still have Donovan Edwards, who really wasn't the star of yesterday's win against the Trojans. It was that Kellel Mullins kid. So the fact that they've got somebody else behind their star running back who can come in and produce some results, that gives me pause now to say, all right, well, Michigan's got a hell of a defense still. And yeah, I know they got worked against Texas, and we see what happens when a prolific offense comes in and plays Michigan, at least in the early goings. But this is going to be a different Michigan team. Trust me, that Ohio State is going to see at the end of the year. They are going to continue to get better. And I think the defense is going to continue to get better. They're going to establish the rushing attack. However, their passing game, they've got to do something with that, because Davis Warren and Alex Orji, who I think Michigan threw for like 43 yards total yesterday, something ridiculous like that. So if they expect to win games this year solely based on their defense and their running the ball, I think that they can have some pretty good success. But is it going to lead them to a Big Ten conference title game and the playoff? I don't think so. But that was a great win for them yesterday. I think that was, even though an overrated USC team, as per the usual, excuse me, that was still a heck of a way for them to respond to that Texas loss and to be down late in the game by 4 points, and they were able to pull out the win. So aside from Ohio State right now, I think, Illinois, they're the surprise. They're the true surprise. They go into Nebraska, like you said, Drew. Kind of shocked me a little bit that they responded the way they did. Old Brett Bielema, he's got them playing on another level. And so right now, Illinois could be that outside surprise favorite. And a lot of people were talking about Nebraska. Now, all of a sudden, we kind of maybe have to shift a little bit, at least at this point, and really take into consideration Illinois, especially, as you just said, Dillon, they got a huge matchup against Penn State this weekend. So that's going to be the true test to see how for real is Illinois to be able to, I believe that game is in Happy Valley, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he said it's wide out.
To go into Happy Valley. Nebraska and Penn State back to back for Illinois. If they go into Penn State and win that game, now all of a sudden, folks, all bets are off. All bets are off. As far as who we really got to now start taking into consideration as being a legit contender in the Big Ten Conference title race. But Drew, I'll end on this. Indeed, we had a quick, it was an in-passing conversation of sorts with someone down at the Woody who shall remain nameless, but they indeed said that they knew what kind of team Oregon had, and that Oregon was nowhere near what Ohio State has, and they could not wait for the opportunity to play Oregon and show Buckeye Nation and the rest of the country what Oregon, and more specifically Ohio State, is all about. Indeed, that was a conversation that we had. So
surprising.
It will be interesting. That's obviously really going to be, I mean, this weekend against Michigan State, as you said, Dillon, the tests are going to start elevating. got Michigan State on the road to open the Big Ten. Then you got Iowa. Then you got, out there in Eugene. So the next 3 games are going to be very paramount for Ohio State. And, I'm a just win, baby kind of guy. I don't care how you win. And I really think that now, given the 12-team format landscape, as long as you go win the Big Ten, you can have 2 losses. But if you go win the Big Ten, you're now assured a top 4 spot and a bye in the college football playoff. So at this point, style points still kind of matter because you've got that 5 through 12 section that the committee's still going to rank. Just go win the damn game. And if you're able to win by 1 point or 1,000, who cares? Just go win. But the next 3 games are definitely going to be a true test for the Buckeyes for sure.
All right, finally, because we're gonna have a hard stop here. This is Andy's segment he's been waiting for all off season. He wanted to rename the show this, and I said, Andy, it's a show about Ohio State. We can't name the show "Screw the Blue." This is
we
Andy's segment.
absolutely
He
can
really
name
wanted
this show "Screw the Blue," but I'll concede for you, Drew, just because you're my.
This is your segment, Andy. I have no idea what you want to talk about here.
So this is what I'm thinking here, Buckeye Nation. We end the show with a Screw the Blue segment where we rip on Michigan, given this past week's news. Now, of course, had they lost to USC, this would have been the most appropriate time to really bash them. But unfortunately, there are still lots of things to bash Michigan on. But had they lost to USC, yeah, we could really be ripping on the smelly rodents and saying, ha, you're 2-2, and the only 2 ranked teams that you played, you got beat by. But hey, they beat USC, so obviously we can't rip on them for that. But I don't know, Dillon, do you have some sort of Screw the Blue something to talk about where you can rip on Michigan regardless of how old the news is? How do you want to screw the Blue this week?
I would never just rip on a team just for the sake of. I mean, obviously I grew up a Buckeye fan. I have my feelings about Michigan, but I would never just rip on just for the sake of it after they just got a really nice win, a really good program win. I'm not going to rip on them, for anything after that. Look, their quarterback situation is what it is, and we know that you mentioned earlier, like it has to get better, but it's not going to. It is what it is. Like, I mean, it's established. It's a firm bad. Like there's no going. Davis Warren and Alex Orji aren't going to get better this season. Like that's who it is. And unless anything short of playing Jaden Davis, the freshman, and him ended up being the real deal right away, there's nothing that's going to help that offense be anything more than an offense that you hope you can rip off some chunk yardage in the run game and get points out of it, because you're going to have to win 17 to 14 games, from here on out. Mullings is their best running back. That's no disrespect to Donovan Edwards. I've always thought Donovan Edwards was overrated. Overrated, that's relatively speaking. I still think he's a good back, but overrated for what, a lot of people, this opinion they have on him. Nobody's gotten more mileage out of a single performance than Donovan Edwards did in that Ohio State game in 2021 or 2022, excuse me. But Mullings is their best running back. Kid looks fantastic. What a find for Sharon Moore in Michigan. But that offense is what it is, and they're not going to get better in the passing game. So anybody saying, oh well, they have to get better, they're not going to. Like, this is who Michigan is, and if you can find a way to win football games like that, then more power to you. They did yesterday, and a big one at that, and good for them. So I'm not going to rip on them for anything. That was a really good win for them to kind of keep their season going, because it was pretty much, if they lose that game yesterday, as everybody expected, it was kind of at that point, where do you go from here? And again, playing Jaden Davis, the freshman, and just getting him time was about the only thing that Michigan would have had left if they had lost that football game. As it is, they still have a path to winning the Big Ten in the playoff. As crazy as it may be, it's still there, where it wouldn't have been if they would have lost the game yesterday. So not going to rip on them for that. Kudos to Michigan, and we'll see if they can continue to win the football games in that way. I have my doubts.
Well,
I am real quick, Drew. All right, and I'm going to keep it real brief, and then you can end things. You suck, you smell, and I hate everything about you.
All right. I'm going to just quote my cousin, who's a diehard Michigan fan. We talk all the time. He's a smart football fan. He's been saying for years, Edwards is overrated and terrible. He only plays well against the Buckeyes, which It's its only saving grace. He's fast. He has breakout speed, but he's not that hard of a runner. They can't pass the ball. He said guys are just going to stack the box against Orgy. They're not going to be a winning team with Orgy as a starting quarterback if he can't complete passes. So Kirk Cameron's going to have to figure something out if they have a path. With that being said, I'm not excited to play Michigan this year, even as good as we are, because Michigan is still kind of back, and we've seen the way we've played against them the last 3 years. Now we've come up short and had disappointing performances. So, but with that being said, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. Dillon, what are you writing about? What's your next article you're going to write?
I wrote about the running backs today or last night into the day, which is no surprise. Everybody's writing about those running backs. So I haven't really thought about what's next. A lot of that will depend on, what we're going to, which coordinator we're going to get on Tuesday, because I have a couple ideas for that, but we don't know who we're going to get on Tuesdays. So yeah, I'm not sure what I'm writing next. I would like to write a Tywone Malone story. Tywone Malone played a ton yesterday. I was the only person going back to spring practice talking about, I mean, literally the only person on this beat, and this beat is large, the only person talking about Tywone Malone. And I do mean that literally. And telling people like, hey, this guy looks really good. And I think this might be, the time where he kind of pushes into that rotation and actually sees the field in meaningful snaps. That carried into fall camp. Still nobody talking about Tywone Malone, all this depth, K-Mac, all these guys, Jason Moore, all these guys. You hear all these names. Nobody's talking about Tywone Malone. Tywone Malone played really well yesterday. Hero Canoe had a very bad football game. Tywone Malone took over and played, most of the game. I don't even know if Hero came in the second half, to be honest with you. And Tywone Malone played really well. So I'd like to write that story, but I need to be able to, talk to Tywone. So hopefully we'll get him at some point. But real quick, last thing about Michigan. I hear you. I get it. We're kind of Ohio State fans are kind of going back to the Cooper years where you just always dread that game because you just always expect something's going to happen or but not Ohio State will win that game by 17, 20 points. I'm not a person who makes those kind of projections and whatnot. Playing in Columbus, Ohio State is such a better football team than Michigan. Like truly, I tell you what, if Michigan came to Columbus and ran the ball for 300 yards, which is what they would have to do to win that game, then man, it would probably be the lowest of lows for Ohio State. So Ohio State's going to win that game by 17 to 20 points. I firmly believe that, and I would never say that if I didn't. So
that's a pretty strong statement to make. Andy, you writing about anything?
Nah, I think we'll see who we get on Wednesday. And to Dillon's point, even which coordinator comes out on Tuesday. But I did want to point out something, Dillon. Kudos to and props to you trying to really hype up Tywone Malone. Yesterday, 3 tackles, 1 for loss. Hero Canoe. Name isn't even on the defensive stat sheet, and Hero Canoe started the game. So tip of the cap to you, sir. Write that Tywone Malone. Hopefully he's one of the guys that we get to see on Wednesday. That would be really cool. But as far as Michigan State is concerned, I will say this. Their passing game, awful. They have 4 touchdown passes against 7 interceptions. And they still, as far as passing yards is concerned, as often as they throw the ball, they are one of the worst passing yardage teams in the Big Ten. Well, no, they're one of the better ones. They've got like 988 yards, which is like 5th right now. But still, this is a bad passing offense. This could be a game, to your point, Drew, to unleash the hounds and dial up some blitzes and put some pressure on Michigan State to force them to either take a sack or throw the ball into traffic and get a pick or two, because 2 straight games without a turnover would be great to see the Buckeyes get back into form that we saw against Akron and get a pick or 2 in that game. So other than that, we'll see what happens this week. And I'm excited for the Buckeyes to go up to East Lansing. And I don't know about 17 to 20 points. You know me. I like to reserve myself. I'll have to see what the spread is. But I could see them winning by, I could see about a 2-touchdown to 17-point win. I could. But I'm probably going to reserve myself a little bit more. So we'll see.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. We'll see you guys on Wednesdays at the Woody. All right, guys. Take care and make it a great day.
Thank you.